Hello, so recently I mentioned that I had ordered some books at Book Depository a while ago and I thought I would haul them, but at the same time my thoughts on doing hauls have changed since I actually did one. I found out that I really don't enjoy talking about books that I don't know and being very vague about them because I really can't tell anything about them yet. However, I decided that I could just give a little twist to it, so I thought, what if I, instead of just showing you the books, I would focus more on why I purchased those, which is obvious, but also what I expect of them, because usually I buy a book and then have a lot of very vague but also very expressive expectations, and after reading them I completely forget what those were, while they were actually really important in how I experienced the book. But afterwards I often forget them because that experience of my expectation gets replaced by the actual experience. So I decided that it might be better if I record it. And that solves two problems, because it also seems like a really fun way of doing a book haul. And I can still talk about the books I got, and it's actually, I got those a while ago, but I at some point decided that I wanted to talk about those specific books, and then I just wanted to do it. I have 8 books here, I think, which are all ordered at Book Depository. However, I have at this point read 2 of them, I think, and I'm starting the 3rd one soon. So let's get into the books. So there are a couple of books which I had been eyeing for a very long time, and where I thought like, oh, I want this specific edition because I had added it on Goodreads in a certain edition, or my feeling of the book matched that edition, which is the case with the first one, Jeffrey Eugenides' The Virgin Suicide. I have just started it, but then couldn't really get into it because I wasn't in the right mood to read at all. So I just put it, I had been reading 2 pages and decided to start at a later moment because I just finished something else effectively. However, what I expected is kind of a summary read, and that's why I really wanted this specific edition instead of the thriller-like editions that are everywhere now. And those have been everywhere for years, which kind of put me off buying this, even though I've been wanting to read this for 3 years now. It's basically about the Lisbon sisters who have all committed suicide, and then you read that from the perspective of their neighbor boys, I think, who and everyone tries to find out why they did it, and it goes into mental health, I think. But for some reason, I've always associated it with a very summery, very innocent, while at the same time very dark. So just that really happy chilling in the garden, and then suddenly everyone actually is really unhappy. It's more a feeling of that really summery, happy innocence that gets with a really dark, disturbing twist. However, I've heard a couple of reviews saying everybody likes this apparently, but I don't. And then just a few who actually liked it. So I'm kind of anxious, but however, I read the first page and it sounded good. I really liked the writing, could really get into it, even though I was, as I said, really not in the mood for reading, but it just sounds like something I really want to enjoy. And I mean, I've been thinking about this for over 3 years, so it's about time I picked this up. Then there are the other 2 which I bought because I had heard of them and wanted to get them for a long time, but again, I had sort of associated them with certain covers, even though not as specific as this one qua vibe, but more just I expected these books to be really amazing, so I wanted a nice edition. Why I thought that is that they're both modern classics. I generally agree with the opinion of whoever decided that these books are modern classics, but because I really love them in general. and I've read them both and I love them both so much. I have, I think, rated 6 books 5 stars now, 2 of which are those 2. So the first one is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and come on, look at this cover, it's so pretty, and you always see it on mugs and stuff, and that's kind of why I wanted this one. Well, not specifically for the mugs, but just that's the Great Gatsby cover you see everywhere, and I just thought it's really nice. It also has like a really nice font. You always see the Wordsworth Classics edition, but the font is so tiny, and oh my god. I actually read Pride and Prejudice recently, and I think that the extremely tiny fonts, like the extremely tiny fonts, really ruined it for me, because I felt like I couldn't get through it. And if you compare it, it's incredible. Like, especially because this is a bit harder to get through anyway. Again, I have no idea what I actually expected of it, because I've read it now. I mean, I saw the film a couple of years ago because my friend had read the book, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna give a Great Gatsby themed party and we're all gonna watch the film. And I was actually, but spoilers. But then I thought, like, I can't bill on one of my best friend's party. So I decided, well, I'll watch the film. And the only disadvantage of that for me was that every time Gatsby was mentioned, I saw the face of Leonardo DiCaprio. But I had forgotten like the actual plot quite a bit. I'm not really a film person anyway. I forget plots of films quite easily, I guess. The writing in this is definitely its strongest point. It's really beautiful. Yeah. And the characters were just all awful, and I didn't really find the symbolism myself, even though I knew it was there, you know, because sometimes there are just these things and you hear people mention, oh, the light, is something, and I was at that point like, oh no, I want to read it without all these outward impressions of other people saying what I must find in the book. But I think hearing the whole symbolism of the green light that symbolizes old money, and then Gatsby, that's new money, etc. And the contrast between that and the characters and the relations between them that's built around them was really cleverly done. There were really strong themes and really strong symbolism, but they didn't feel forced into the story like you sometimes have. I remember a book I read a while ago, but it's Dutch literature. Dutch literature is always a bit different, and there, whilst reading it, you could just feel the writer sitting there looking over your shoulder. Oh, you didn't get that symbolism, did you? Oh, no, you didn't catch it. Oh, you had to look it up. Oh, you're so stupid. And I didn't have that with this at all. It felt very natural, and it really contributed to the story. But at the same time, if you didn't catch it, the story was still very good. It's about a man called Nick who moves in next door to Jay Gatsby, who lives in a really big house, but is quite mysterious. And it's about all these relationships between the people. There's also a couple, Daisy and Tom. They're really obnoxious people, but at the same time quite strangely lovable. In the case of Daisy, I really despise Tom. And there's Jordan, and it's just about the whole rich people being rich and being assholes to each other, effectively. But it's really enjoyable and it's really well written, and it is really tragic, so that compensates how annoying they are, basically. Because if you read a book and characters are as obnoxious as possible, and next thing you know they end up just being happy and it feels like the writer doesn't disagree with how they are, that's a bad thing, I feel, because if the writer writes something without the intention of the bad people being bad people, even if they aren't portrayed as bad people, I mean, this probably is very messy, but if the writer writes someone who is clearly doing bad things but masks it as good, and the writer actually feels that this person is good, which you just know for some reason, I think that's a very bad thing. But in this, it just felt like everyone ended up at the right place, you know? It's just the story in its entirety that makes this so beautiful. But oh, I was planning on doing a wrap-up and I just talked about my whole opinion. Next one is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I just finished this. It's amazing. I loved it even more than The Great Gatsby. Even though when I got this, with The Great Gatsby I already had the feeling like, oh, this is going to be beautifully written. But with this I just thought, it's probably good because everyone says it's good. And sometimes you just have to follow the hype. I didn't really have an idea yet about what this book was all about. I knew it dealt with racism, but it's basically a coming-of-age story in the first place that deals with a girl who is growing up. In this part of her life, her father, who is a lawyer, defends a black man who has allegedly raped a woman, and because they live in a really small 60s Southern American town, so Southern North American town basically, of course the whole town is gossiping and being little shit, and it's about her growing up in that environment and people treating each other in those ways and dealing with racism and prejudice in those times. There is also a really powerful scene where the main character realizes that her teacher is all against Hitler because that has just like been a thing. That teacher is all like, oh, he persecutes people and he's a bad man, and she explains it a bit, and the girl is just like, oh, but isn't that the same thing we do to black people? It's very powerful but very nicely written so that you can just read it without having this really heavy thing and you can just enjoy it at the same time. So it's not, you're just saying, oh, this is so horrible. Wow, I read 10 pages, I need to lie down for a while. It's just like, oh, it's such a nice cozy read whilst at the same time dealing with serious topics in such a good way. I would recommend both of these books, honestly. This one might be a new favorite. I adore it. However, there was someone who I trust, I don't know who it was, but she made a video saying why she didn't like this book, and I was still reading it at the moment, so I decided not to watch that video at that moment because I thought, oh, that might spoil the reading experience for me. But I'm really curious what she had to say actually. I just remembered that. Well, okay, that's then there's 5 more books. Oh, I need to hurry up, Jesus. Which I know less about, so that's okay. The first 2 are by Sartre, actually. I decided I need to read more things that either are philosophy or have to do with philosophy. I picked up Existentialism is a Humanism by Sartre, which is an essay on his theory of existentialism, which is you have all the responsibility and you can make your own person. Your identity is what you do, is in your actions. I haven't really been into this theory for a while, so I really wanted to get into it again. But the second half of the book, like from page 70 or something on till page 100 or something, is a commentary on The Stranger by Albert Camus. I haven't read that. I almost ordered it, but it didn't say anywhere in the description on any website that was a part of this book. It doesn't even say on the back, so that's really strange. Or well, it doesn't really say anything on the back actually. It does say in the flap, so if it had been in any real life store I could have known, but it wasn't as far as I was concerned. So I might wait reading this until I find The Stranger somewhere, because I really like reading books in one go because Goodreads, honestly. But also the sense of completion, and it's not like I don't have anything else to read, but it's a very bad reasoning. However, Nausea is fiction. I can read Nausea, and I feel it's this really Parisian vibe with just, I mean, this is just non-fiction, an essay, but I feel this is really French and really cool, you know, but at the same time it deals with a writer, I believe, who has this sense of dooming existentialism, I feel, who suddenly becomes aware of this responsibility he has, and that this responsibility is all in himself. That's what I know. Oh, I really want to read this now. Maybe I'll just put down for you so I can pick this up, because I just made myself really excited about this book. Not that I didn't want to read it in the first place, but it sounds so good. I hope it's really like this. Then I have 3 more. Yeah, I have 3 more. First one's Voltaire, Candide. Basically, I only know that this is a 17th century, I believe, Enlightenment era play that's a satire and a comical critique on society. Yeah. And the only sentence I know is, if this is the best of all possible worlds, then what would all the other possible worlds be like? Something like that. And that basically goes back to Leibniz's theory, in which states there's a numerous amount of different possible worlds, and that because God exists, he let us live in the best of all possible worlds. And actually, the introduction starts off, I mean, this is the Oxford World Classic. Those always have really extensive introductions and extra things. I have a copy of Poetics by Aristotle, which is over 100 pages, even though the thing itself is only like 60. But this is and other stories, so this includes multiple things, and I just thought, oh, Voltaire must be a good read, you know, I mean, but this edition presents a selection of the best of all possible stories by Voltaire. That's literally what it says, and well, that can only be good read. I just really like to get familiar with all the famous philosophical and just famous texts that kind of have to do with philosophy, even though they are maybe not like Hume or the Leviathan by Hobbes, but that play a vital role but aren't those texts in themselves. So I thought, well, I really want to read Voltaire, and I really found that joke hilarious, so I just decided, might pick it up. The last two are both Black Penguin classics. I love those. First one's Early Greek Philosophy. This is just pre-Socratian philosophy. Basically, for the last 2 years I have been doing a philosophy degree, and I've only read 2 texts before Socrates. And I know that's because that's basically where the Western philosophy starts, but I'm also really interested in what preceded him. And I've read Epicurus, who is a hedonist. That was a really long time ago. That was the first thing we had to read in university. And I read a secondary text on Heraclitus with some quotes from him, but I thought, well, I really want to familiarize myself with this. That's basically it. I can't really give extensive expectations or something. I just want to read it. And then there's, along the same lines, Sophocles' 3 Theban plays. And these are the Oedipus plays, one of which, Oedipus the King, I believe, is the very well-known myth of Oedipus and his mother. Everything comes back to Freud, and Freud comes back to Oedipus. I also want to get more into ancient Greek and ancient Roman texts, so I decided that this would be the best starting point possible. Barely know anything about Oedipus, but I'm a bit familiar with Greek tragedies, etc. And they're always such a lot of fun, especially plot-wise. It's just crazy. And for a while, wanting to pick something up, and then I saw this edition and thought, yeah, I want this. So that's basically the books I wanted to talk about. I think I did what I wanted to do, you know? It's still a book haul, and I still can talk about the books I purchased and which I'm excited about, but without just saying I'm excited about it. Because even though that's sometimes fun, I also like to just talk casually about what I'm looking forward to and why I'm looking forward to it. So I hope this was any fun for someone else as well, because I really enjoyed it. I think I'm gonna do more, well, if I purchase books, I'm not going to buy books for the sake of doing book hauls, but I'll buy books at some point. And I think this is a really nice format, is if I just can talk about my expectations and focus on that. So I hope other people like this as well, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye!